Daf Hayamid Beis will begin Hayamid Aleph, the end of the last line. We learned previously that Rabbi Akiva said that how do we know that Tashbis, that the mitzvah is on Yud Daled on Erev Pesach, because the pasuk says Ach b'yom harishon tashbisu sari bateich, and it says Kol malacha lo ye'asaveh. So it can't be that the burning of the chametz is on that Yom Rishon, means Tezvav, means the first day of Pesach, which is Yom Tov, because burning is a malacha. Umatzinu la'avora sheyah malacha. And we see that havora, burning, is an av malacha. So it can't be that the burning is done on Pesach. It must be by Erev Pesach. It must be Erev Pesach. Amar Rabba says we can learn out from here. Shema minam Rabbi Akiva tlas. We can learn out three halachas from what Rabbi Akiva said. Shema mina and bir chometz el sreifa. We can learn out from here that bir sreifa chometz, the way you destroy the chometz, must be through sreifa, through burning. Because if you could be mekayim the beer without sreifa, so what's your raya? Destroy it in other means which don't involve a malach, which don't involve burning. Elamai, he must hold like Rabbi Yehuda. We'll see in the Viter that Rabbi Yehuda holds that bir chometz must be b'sreifa. So Rabbi Akiva must hold as well that bir chometz is sreifa. Therefore, as a raya, you can't burn the chometz on Pesach. It must be Erev Pesach. That's the first halacha that we learned out. Ushma mino havora lechalek yatzos. And we learn over here that havora is lechalik, that the reason that the term mentions havora is lechalik. There's a machlokes, Rav Yossi and Rav Nosson. Do we say that, why did the Torah mention loisevaru hol mashvesechem? We have all the malachas, so 39 malachas. And why did it single out burning? Why did it single out havora? So there's a machlokes. Do we say that it's lelav yatzos, that it's to teach you that burning, that lighting the fire is different? It's not one of the other malachas. It's lelav, it's a alav, and it's not a malacha like the rest of them that have a punishment of skila with it. It's lelav, and it's not a malacha gemura. Or do we say, no, it is a malacha gemura? And what we say is, however, why did the Torah mention it separately? To teach you that each malacha, one is chayav for doing it on its own. You might have thought that there's 39 malachas, a person is only chayav skila and kares, and he's only chayav if he does all of them, all 39 of them. So by the Torah singling out havora, burning on its own, that teaches us that havora is on its own, it's a malacha. So too, each and every one of the malachas are on their own, independently. They're malacha, and you're chayav for each one on its own, not only collectively. Now, from the fact that Rabbi Akiva says that you're chayav, that it's the Torah says that don't do havora, and he calls it an av malach. Rabbi Akiva says that in his lashon, he says umatzinu la'avora shi av melach. That teaches us, we know that havora is an av melach. So that means that from the fact that he called it an av melach, that means that he must hold that it's not lelav yatzos, it's lechalek yatzos, it's an av melach. That's the way Rashi learns. The Taisus and other Rishonim learn in addition that it can't be that it's only lelav yatzos. It can't be that it's only lelav yatzos, that it's not a malacha. Because if he did hold that way, if he did hold like Rav Yossi, then on Yom Tov, one would not be chayiv for that. Because one is only chayiv on Yom Tov for a genuine malacha. So from the fact that Rabbi Akiva says that you cannot do the havara on Yom Tov, that shows you that he holds that it, like Rav Nosson, that it's a malacha gemura and havara is l'chalek yatzos. So that's the second halacha that we learn. No, we learn out additionally the third halacha that lo yamnin and hoyel v'hutra havara l'tzarach hutra nami shaloi l'tzarach. Now, havara, burning on Yom Tov, is mutter for the purpose of Eichel Nefesh, for food, for the preparation of food. And that's mutter. Rabbi Akiva says, we see from the fact that you have to burn the chametz, can't be on Yom Tov, because you can't burn on Yom Tov. Well, you can burn things for purpose of Eichel Nefesh, you can cook for Eichel Nefesh. Now, if he held of Mitoich, there would be no raya. What does Mitoich say? Mitoich says, there's a principle that says that you see the Torah is matered for the purposes of Eichel Nefesh, for preparation of food, Mitoich, that it's hutra l'tzarech, for the purpose of food, it's mutter even shalai l'tzarech. That's the basic principle of Mitoich. Now, there's qualifications of that. There has to be some sort of purpose for the yontiv, etc. But that's the general principle. Now, if Rabbi Kiva held of that general principle of Mitoich, there'd be no raya, because havara, burning, would not be aser on yontiv. Since it's mutter for the purpose of Eichel Nefesh, it would be mutter even shalai l'tzarech. And the fact that he said you cannot burn the chometz on Pesach, that shows you that he doesn't hold a mitoich, because if he did, there would be no raya. Yes, it's yontiv, and yes, you're burning it, but burning isn't aser on yontiv. Alamai, you see, the Rabbi Kiva does not hold of the principle of mitoich. So those are three halachos that we learn out from Rabbi Kiva. Now the Gemara continues with a discussion of the general isurim about not having chometz and yerushos on Pesach, bal yero, bal yematzah. Tan Rabbanan, we learned in the Brisa, Shivas Yomim Saor Lo Masechet Pesachim. The pasuk says that for 7 days you should not have Saor, and it says in your houses. Why do we need this pasuk? V'lo kfar nemar. It says v'lo yeiro lecha Saor b'chol gvulecha. It says it should not have chometz. It should not be found in all of your gvulim, in all your borders. So why do we need the pasuk of lo yimatze bevatechem? It says lo yira b'chol gvulcha, in all of your borders. Now in the pasuk of lo yimatze, it doesn't say the word lecha. It says batim, and it doesn't say lecha. It should not be found. It should not be found for you, or seen to you. It doesn't say lecha. In the pasuk of lo yira lecha saor b'chol gvulecha, it says borders, which are more than houses, is broader, and it also says lecha, but it restricts it to lecha. So the Gemara is going to analyze it. So lefi shenemar lo yira lecha saor, the pasuk says it should not be seen to you, shelcha yataroi, which means it's only if it implies if your chametz, if it's your chametz. But if it's not your chametz, if it doesn't belong to you, it doesn't belong to a yid, it belongs to hektish or to a nachri, then it would be permissible. Then the Brisa continues. Yochel yatmin, you might think that you can hide it so it's not seen. So lo yaro means you can't see it. You might think if you hide it, it's okay. Or if you kabel pigdoinus min nachri, or that if he has a pikotin, if he has a deposit, the ownership belongs to the nachri, and it's just in his possession for safekeeping. You might think that's permitted. Talmud Leimer lo yimatze. Therefore, it says lo yimatze, and the pasuk of lo yimatze, it doesn't say lecha. The Gemara will ask the obvious question: you just told me that for a nachri it's permitted, and now you're telling me you might think you can be makabel a pikon from a nachri, which means that it's also. And it says lo yimatze, and the pasuk of lo yimatze doesn't say lecha, which means it's also. Well, is it nachri, is it mutter, or is it also? So the Gemara will deal with this. But the Brisa continues. Now we make this chilik by a nachri, and we say that the iser applies even by epikotin v'nach. So Eli el b'nachri shaloi kivashta. I only know what applies v'nachri shaloi kivashta v'nachri that is not under your dominion. Ve'ein shora imcha b'chaser, and does not live with you in the chaser. What does it mean shaloi kivashta? Meaning I only know it's a nachri that wasn't makabel zayin Mrs. B'nai Noyam, and he's not living with you in a chatzar. But nachri shekibashta v'sharim b'chatzar minayin. How do I know that even by a nachri that he's makabel zayin misses? Meaning he's under your dominion, and he's living with you in a chatzar. Talmud loymar lo yimatze b'vatechem. It says lo yimatze b'vatechem. It should not be found in your homes, and therefore we would know, even in such a case, even if it's not on your dominion. So again, the Gemara is going to have to explain this because it's not readily understood. Bryce continues, I only know that if this is in your homes. So I know that this Isser of not having chametz on Pesach, it should not be found. It says, Bevatech. How do I know to broaden it to include Bebaris, Beshich, and Bebaris Minayin? How do we know that the Isser applies, even if the chametz is in pits or ditches or caves or vaults? How do I know that it applies there as well, even though these are not your houses? That's why I have the pasuk that says, all of your borders, even if it's not your house. I would still say, Babatim, and the houses, that you're over Bal Yamotz. So I would say that's in your houses. And even if it's hidden, and even if it's not yours, it's only something that you're watching on behalf and guarding on behalf of another. Bigvulin, but I might say Bigvulin Shalcha Iataroya Avalataraya Shalachirim Shalgavoya. If it's not in your houses, then again the pasuk of Gvulecha says L'cha. It says yours. So I might have thought bin the Gvulin, then I would apply the L'cha and say Shalcha Iataroya Avalataraya Shalgavoya. But it's permitted to have Nochen Gavoya. Minayin litin is homishal zebazah. How do I know to apply both to both? Meaning, one pasuk says that lo yimotze can't be found chametz lo yimotze in your houses. It says lo yimotze bevatech. You can't find it in your houses. It doesn't say l'cha, and it says houses. The other pasuk says lo yara l'cha. It says lo yara l'cha to you, or b'chol gvulach. It's not restricted to houses, but it says l'cha. So how do I know litein ha'amar l'zebazeh? Meaning, on one hand, we broaden it. The pasuk says, one pasuk says lo yimatzeh bevatechem, which means restricted only in the houses. The other pasuk says gvulecha. It expands it even outside the houses. But the pasuk that says gvulecha, your borders, but also minimizes it because it says l'cha, which implies that only if it's yours and not if it's a nochri or hektish. So minayin litenas homer shel zebazeh v'shel zebazeh tamud loima saor l'saor l'gzer shova. It says in both psukim saor lo yimotze saor or lo yora saor. Nemer sor b'batim, it says sor b'batim, and it says sor lo yimatz b'vatech. Nemer sor b'gvulim, and it says sor b'gvulim, it says lo yara l'cha sor. Ma sor hamur b'batim, just like where it says sor b'batim. It's ayrim mishum bal yara bal yamatze. Now that pasuk it says lo yamatze, so therefore it's also bal yara, bal yamatze, ubal yatim, ubal yakabel pigdainas, and even if you hide it, and even if you're makabel pigdainas, because over there it doesn't say lo yara. It says over there it says lo yamatze. It says in that pasuk shivas yom sor lo yamatze. So even if it cannot be found, even if it's not seen, meaning even if it's buried, and it doesn't say l'cha, that means even if it belongs to a nachri or to hektish. So therefore, just like that pasuk is, that you're over you're over, even if you hide it, so you're over bal yamos. So the sor that says in the gvulin also, even though it doesn't say houses, and even though it doesn't say yimotze, you're over on all of these things as well. And just like the sor that it says in the gvulin. Then over there it does say l'cha, so we say shalcha iataroy, avalataroi shalachim shal gavoya. But you could see what doesn't belong to you, achem gavoya, afsar hamur bebatim, shalcha iataroy, avalataroi shalachim shal gavoya. But you could see what belongs to others. So now the Gemara has to analyze this brayso. Brayso is saying on one hand, the pasuk of lo yimotze, over there the pasuk of lo yimotze, it doesn't say l'cha. So therefore, it implies, even if you're not the owner of it, even if it does not belong to you, even if the ownership is a nokri, it'd be awesome. But over there it says batim. It seems to be restricted to batim. The pasuk of the Gvulecha, it expands it to all of your borders, even outside of your houses, even Barashech and Marais. Over there it says L'cha, which implies that it only applies if it belongs to you, but not if it applies to a Nochri. Now, the pasuk of Lo Yimatze doesn't only say Lo Yiro if you don't see it. It can't be found, which means even if you bury it. The pasuk of Gvulecha says Lo Yiro, so which means it applies only if you see it, not if you bury it. How do you know that it applies? The Isser applies Bal Yiro, Bal Yimatze. It applies whether it's in your house, whether it's outside of your house, whether you own it or a Nachri owns it. How do you know to apply to all of these cases? We have a Sor, like Zereshov. Now, what we have to deal with is, on one hand, the Brisa says that by a Nochri is mutter, because it says L'cha. On the other hand, it says a Nochri is also, because it doesn't say L'cha. So what, in fact, is the pshat in the Brisa? So we have to analyze now, the Gemara is going to analyze this Brisa and step by step. Now, the Maisa, we have the Gzera Shava there. Therefore, the question is, at the end of the day, and this is a machlekes between the Rambam and other Rishonim and the Ran, that if you have chometz that you don't see, then if it's chometz so the Brisa says that if it's chometz that is you see or over on Bal Yiro, Bal Yimatze. But if it's chometz that you don't see, that's not visible, at the end of the day, are you over on Bal Yiro, Bal Yimatze on those cases as well, or are you not? Now the Rambam says that when something which is visible chometz, where it's visible, you're over on Bal Yiro and Bal Yimatze, that you're over on both. But if it's not visible, if it's buried, if it's hidden, so there's Lo Yimatze, but the Bal Yiro doesn't apply. But according to the Ran, he says, since we now learn one from the other, and we apply both psukim, we have the Gzera Shava, L'maisa at the end of the day, he says whether it's visible or not visible, you'll be over on Bal Yiro and Bal Yimatze in both cases. So now the Gemara is going to analyze the Brisa. I only know that the Isra applies with a Nochri that Lo Kibas, that's not under your domain, that is not a Ger Taishav. It doesn't live with you in the chasr. But how do I know to apply the Isser even to a Nochri that's under your domain, that's your shlit, that is living with you, and that is a ger taisha? Talmud Leimer Lo Yimatze. It says Lo Yimatze, it should not be found. It doesn't say L'cha. It says Lo Yimatze, whether applied owns by you or not. To which direction is this going? Well, you'd say more logically, you'd say the Isra applies to somebody that's under your dominion, that you have shlita over him. Here, it's considered more like you. There'd be more logical to say that that's where the Isra applies. So it should be the opposite. How do I know that it's a Nochri, that not only a Nochri shekibashtai, but the Isra applies even to a Nochri shalai kibash? It should be the opposite way. Amar Abaye epoch hanachanami, you should switch around. Rav Amar says no, la'olam loy tepoch, really don't switch it around. And what is it referring to? It's not going on to the case of the Isra. Ba'reishakoi, it's going to the Heter, the ratio, the beginning of the Brisa. It says in the beginning of the Brisa, Shel Yata Roya, Avalata Roya, Shel Achem, Shel Gavoya. It says Lo Yimatze, and it says in the ratio, it says that Lo Yeroa and Shivas Yom Surah Lo Yeroa Lecho, and it says Lecho, and therefore we darshan yours Yata Roya, Avalata Roya, Shel Achem, Shel Gavoya, and therefore a Nochri is mutter. How do you know that the heter? How do you know the heter applies whether not only by a nochri shekibashta, but a nochri shel? How do I know the heter applies even by a nochri sheloi kibashta? How do I know that it applies even to a nochri shekibashta that is under your shlita? Even there, it's mutter. So only el b'noch sheloi kibashta. Vein shoyim chabachos nachar shekibashta v'shoyim chabachos minayin. How do I know that? How do I know that even over there that it's mutter? Talmud loymer lo yimotze. That's what it says, lo yimotze. So, fact the Gemara. Well, if we're going now, according to Rov, it's going on the case of the hat, and it's going on the case of the hat and saying, well, the Isser is only if it's yours. That's only if it's yours. But if it's not yours, and it's a Nachri, whether Shaloi Kibashta, even Shekibashta, how do you know it's mutter? So it brings the pasuk of Lo Yimotze. By Lo Yimotze, it doesn't say L'cha. L'cha, it should bring the pasuk. It brings the pasuk where it says L'cha. L'cha is where I learn out that only if it's yours there's an Isser. But if you don't own it, there's no Bal Yirah, there's no Bal Yimotze, only if it's yours. So why does it bring the pasuk of Lo Yimotze? So, frankly, it's looking for the source that it's mutter if it doesn't belong to you. And it brings the pasuk where Yisura lo yimotze, where it doesn't say L'cha. Or answers mishum shenemar L'cha tresim. The Gemara answers because, in effect, it really does say L'cha. So, even though it brings the pasuk lo yimotze, where it doesn't say L'cha, but in effect it does. How is that? Because the Torah says in Parshas Boy lo yimotze, and it says in Parshas Boy lo yira l'cha sa'or. It also says in Parshas Re'eh, it also says lo yira l'cha sa'or. Now that's not needed because it already said in Parshas Boy. So we apply the principle im eina inyan. Im eina inyan l'cha to the sa'or for lo yira. Im eina inyan for lo yira, because it already says it in Parshas Boy, Taneu Inyan, Lo Yimotze, in for the pasuk of Lo Yimotze that it says in Parshas Boy where it doesn't say L'cha. So in effect, it is as if it does say L'cha. So therefore, we darshan and say, we apply it to that case and say, then how do I know that it's mutter, even by a goy? Not only by a Nachri Shaloi Kibash, even Shekibash Shrom Yechotzer, Talmud Loimer Lo Yimotze. It doesn't say L'cha. In effect, it does say L'cha, because the pasuk of Lo Yira L'cha that it says in Parshas Rei, we apply it to here, and it's as if it says L'cha, and therefore, what's yours is also, but for a Nachri is mutter. Back to Gemara Omar Mar Yochel Yatmin, you might hide it. And accept a pikadon from a nachri, and if the nachri owns it and you're just watching it, you might think it's mutter. Talmud loimer lo yimotze. It says lo yimotze. It's also, even if it's the nachri, it's also. I freak the Gemara Amud Reisha. You told me in the Reisha, you just told me shel choya taroya vala taroya shelachem shel gavoya. It says by nachri it's mutter. Or answers like kasha hada kabbalah achrayas hada loy kabbalah achrayas. There's a difference whether the yid is makabel achrayas or not makabel achrayas. If he is responsible for it, so if it's lost or stolen, he has to replace it. It's considered like his. Now, even though he doesn't own it, but it's considered like his. And therefore, we say he is Oiver Abal Yerabal Yimotze. But if it's just in his possession and he has no responsibility for it, it's not considered like his. And there we apply L'cha Shel Choya Taroya Shel Acher Shel Gavoya. He said to the people of the time, you have to remove the chametz of the soldiers of the Nachrim from your houses. You would be over in Bal Yirabayim also, so you have to remove it. Why is that? If it becomes lost or stolen. It's considered to be in your rishus, and you would have to replace it and be responsible. And it's considered like yours, and therefore it's also. So you see over here that shel nachri, if you have a responsibility for it, then it's like yours is also. So that's a chiluk. The ratio of the brayso that says where it's shel choy ataroy shel achem shel gavoy is where you have no responsibility. The sefer where it says it's also where you do have a responsibility. Al chayr it's shver though. Because when we say that we apply the l'cha that it says in Parshas Re'eh to the Bal Yamalza that it says in Parshas Boy, so in effect it says L'cha. So then in effect it says L'cha by that pasuk. So therefore, why are we making a chiluk? It's Lo Yimotze, it's as if you say, it says Lo Yimotze. So therefore, Lo Yimotze, it's as if it said Lo Yimotze L'cha. So why should we make a chiluk? Why should we make a chiluk between Lo Yeroah and Lo Yimotze? The Rasha says that, yes, we apply the L'cha that it says in Parshas Rei, but from the fact that it doesn't say it beferish by Lo Yimotze, it's only im eino inyan. It says it by Lo Yeroah. It doesn't say it by Lo Yimotze. So the fact that it doesn't say it beferish teaches us that there's a chiluk. That yes, we apply it, but nicht in ganzen, not completely. And therefore we say that there's a chiluk between nochish kivashta and lo kivashta. The Gemara continues, well, that's fine. You're saying that if he accepted responsibility for the Pikodain, he's over and Balyara Balyamatze. That's fine if you say Davar HaGerm L'momen, that's something that can cause a monetary benefit or a monetary responsibility is considered like money. So, for instance, in this case, if the Yisrael is Mekabel Achrayas, well, this chometz that's in his reshus is considered like his money, because if it's lost or stolen, he'll have to pay money. He's responsible for it, so it's considered like money. So therefore, he's over on Bal Yara Bayamatza. So that's fine. So if you hold that way, like the sheet of Rav Shimon, then we understand. According to Man Domer, it says no, we don't consider it like money. So therefore, he does not have a monetary interest over here in this chometz, according to that Man Domer. So therefore, it's not considered his. So why should it be over? So Ma'ikal Meimer, what are you going to say? Or says no, but Shiny Hachad the Amar Lo Yimotze. But nevertheless, you will be over here, because from the fact that the Torah says Lo Yimotze, and it doesn't say Beferish L'cha, it says Lo Yimotze, but without saying it's only by Einu Inyan that we apply L'cha, and therefore we say that the Mandomar that says that Lav Kemoman Dami, even though it's not considered a mom, but the Torah doesn't say beferish l'cha, which implies that whether you own it or you don't own it, you would be over. So therefore, even though in other cases we would say that davar agarim l'momen is lav kemomen according to that man domer, but from the fact that the Torah didn't specifically explicitly say l'cha by lo yimotze, it teaches you that you'd be over on bal yirah bal yimotze, even in circumstances where it's not strictly considered to be your ownership or that you have a monetary interest. And therefore we make this chilek between whether you're makabel achrayas or whether you're not makabel achrayas.